Peter, are you all ready?
Yeah.
Okay. We're just so pleased that you could come all the way from England.
See what we can send to you.
So, Peter, go ahead and thank you very much.
Right. Well, I got involved, actually it's 12 years ago now, in what turned out to be one of the largest Rotary health missions at the time that had ever been organised. Just a little reminder here, if you're not on speaker view, you might want to click to speaker view. It's on most screens, it's up in the top right hand corner, and that will show you who's speaking, and you'll get the best balance of pictures through the short presentation. So, fighting AIDS in Africa, just to put it into context, when Rotary started fighting polio, 35 years ago, there were about 3 million cases of it across the world. And Rotary's influence, working with all its partner agencies, has brought that down to somewhere between 25 and 40, depending on which statistics you look at. From 3 million down to double digits is a tremendous progress. And back in 2008, there was a strong move by the fellowship or the action group that was then known as RFFA, Rotarians for Fighting AIDS. There was a move then to try to stabilize the situation with AIDS, because it was just running absolutely rampant across the whole world. At the time, there were about 33 million people living with AIDS and the human immune virus, and over 2 million were dying every year. And of that 33 million, about 2/3 were living in Central and Southern Africa. If you can see my cursor moving around the screen, where's it gone? There we are, Central and Southern Africa, what they call Sub-Saharan Africa down there. And every day there were, well, thousands dying, thousands being orphaned. Now, in recent years, new drugs and treatments and better health education have improved things considerably. But the aim of that mission was to identify and treat young women who were susceptible to or suffering from AIDS. And the specific aim was to try to reduce the transmission of the disease from expectant mothers to their unborn children. And if that didn't stop the disease, it would at least give it a chance to plateau out, to stop getting any worse. Now, we couldn't put up a banner saying, if you think you've got AIDS, sort of come on down. So the mission offered free medical, dental and optical care to, well, the sexually active females is what it said on the form, but in other words, the young mums up to the age of 25. And from my point of view, it all began in spring 2008. A Rotarian friend in Atlanta, Georgia, fired off a few emails one week asking if anyone would volunteer to help with the admin work while she was concentrating on fundraising and dealing with the many government and health agencies that would be involved. And it was a Wednesday evening and my wife was out at Girl Scouts and it seemed a good idea. So in a weak moment, I volunteered. I'll be honest, I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. We've got a stack of volunteers, she said. They're all medical professionals of one sort or another. So will you just get in touch with them, find out what are their specialities, and then get them organised into working teams? Well, we had opticians from Denmark, dentists from Brazil, doctors, paediatricians, nurses from all across America, more nurses from South Africa and from Australia. And it took me probably 3 or 4 weeks to get to grips with who was who and who were the regular work partners who'd been on missions before and so on. And you can see some stats there, the total number of people involved. It really was a huge operation. Then I got a message from the mission leader telling me that we had an offer of free transport to transfer all volunteers as they arrived in Nairobi from the airport to the headquarters hotel. So my next quest was to find out which flights the volunteers would be on and to make a schedule of the flights to be met. Straightforward admin sort of job, you might think. Well, it was like herding cats. It took the best part of 2 or 3 months because some people had booked up immediately to get the best price on their air tickets. Other people were running right to the wire and leaving it till the last possible moment. But eventually we got there. They all arrived and unpacked the bags and at the hotel. Oh, just out of naive curiosity, I said, which hotel are you staying at? And that's the next little job. Can you ring Nairobi and just find a hotel for 70 and get the best room rate you can for us, please? Anyway, with the help of the local Rotarians, we managed that. And as I say, we eventually arrived in Nairobi over a weekend, Friday night, Saturday and Sunday morning. People came in on probably about 20 or 30 different flights altogether. Excuse me. Had to just move off at a tangent here. This particular notice in our hotel did give me a bit of a smile. If the rooms on one side have got even numbers, how are the numbers on the other side of the corridor? Odd or uneven? Anyway, it gave us a bit of a smile to start the week. We spent the Saturday sorting out all the medications and consumables. We took over the hotel's conference room because we had about $60,000 worth of medicines and consumables. Not only did we have to tick them off against the delivery schedules, we had to have them all neatly stacked, labels facing forward, so that we could photograph every pile of medication and everything on the list to be able to show to our funders that everything was accounted for and that no funds had been diverted, shall we say, because that's absolutely right. It's rampant. It's just normal behaviour in most African countries and in Kenya in particular. We got all sorted out, and Sunday we decided to give ourselves a little introductory treat just to get to know each other. So we went to a restaurant called Carnivores. Now, the name tells you everything you need to know. Carnivores. There's no vegetarian option on the menu. We paid a flat rate of about $20, and the joints of meat were brought round, skewered on these huge swords, and sliced at the table. Just, you'd like the turkey, sir, so just a few slices straight onto your plate. We had zebra, giraffe, ostrich, and even alligator. And if you're tempted, I can tell you that alligator looks like chicken, but it tastes like a rubber hot water bottle. Don't even go there. Don't even. Come on, click on. There we go. So Monday morning, we actually got started on the mission itself. We had 3 sites we were working at. I was at the largest of the 3, Mukuru, and the city corporation had provided us with 3 battered old buses, windows cracked and missing, seats were, they were all ramshackle old buses because they were going into the slums. They weren't giving us anything that was really good. The site was about 3 miles wide, probably about 2 miles deep, and there were, as near as anyone could tell, about 150,000 shacks built out of scrap timber, corrugated sheeting, old tarpaulins, earth floors, standpipes at every 100 yards or so down the track. And the population, which again had never been accurately counted, was estimated in this particular slum at about 750,000. Adding up the other slums that we're working at, that suggested that 1/3 of Nairobi's population was living in these and similar slums across the city. Typically, they would pay a rent of $7 or $8 a month, but multiply that by 150,000 shacks, and that's quite a comfortable income. And the landowner consequently had no incentive to make improvements. The folks were, well, as best they were able to, they were happy. They had to pay their $7 or $8 a month. He was quite happy to sit there and collect the cash coming in, and he had enough income, shall we say, to oil the wheels of any local government officials who might want to upset his status quo. So these were the conditions folks lived in. We turned off the main road, and it would take us about 25 minutes to drive across the slums at a walking pace. I mean, you couldn't go faster There were kids, dogs, chickens, goats everywhere. And if I tell you, it was like driving at right angles across the ridges of a ploughed field, you'd get an idea. I mean, you certainly checked if your fillings were secure in your upper jaw by the time you got to the campsite. We did pass a local landmark every day, known to the Brits as Marks and Spencer's. This was an enterprising owner who scavenged for what our American friends described as ladies' upper body intimate apparel. And she laundered them, sorted them, and put them on sale. And that was her way of making a living. For us, it was more important as a landmark because we knew we were within 5 minutes of the site and only 5 more bone-shaking minutes before we reached the church site in its compound at the centre of the slums. The local Rotary clubs had hired this church in the centre of the slum and its adjacent buildings for 2 full weeks. And we operated a triage system. Well, first of all, we had a retired London policeman manning the front gate, and he would allow them in groups of a couple of dozen, about 20, 25 people at a time were allowed onto the site. They went into the church building here, and we had triage nurses working through the rows of people awaiting attention. Each nurse had a Swahili interpreter, and they worked up and down the rows, prioritising any patients who had significant illnesses or conditions. Most of them, of course, had come because it was free, and they didn't really have anything significantly wrong. So we had to sort the wheat from the chaff. While the patients were waiting in the church, we had a team of medical students working in pairs who delivered a continuous lecture on health and hygiene. And working in pairs, they each gave about a 10-minute presentation, took a 5-minute breather, and the next pair took over and ran the show again, as it were. So while the patients were sheltering from the sun inside the church, whether they were listening or not, they heard this lecture 3 or 4 times probably before they were out into the registration area, which was just across the courtyard in this little funny little building. We didn't know whether it was a bandstand or a bus shelter. It was a funny little place. Anyway, the registration team, we've got our doctors and final year medical students, again with Swahili speakers, recording the patient's names, age, sex, any significant medical history and so on. We were all quite shocked by a very young girl. The nurses said she was probably only about 6 years old, possibly 5, possibly 6. The girl didn't know. And she was just standing in rags and tatters and just looked absolutely, totally bewildered and lost. And on her back, bundled in a shawl, was an infant of about 4 months. And when we inquired, father was long gone, dead or disappeared, she didn't know. Mother had died giving birth to this infant on her back, and the 6-year-old was the sole survivor, entirely responsible for looking after that baby. Absolutely shocking. I mean, instinct at the time was to pass a hat round and everybody throw a few dollars in, but we couldn't do that because she wouldn't understand the value of the money, and she would probably be robbed the moment she left the church compound. So we cleaned her, treated some minor wounds, fed, reclothed her, and a couple of the local Rotarians delivered her to a local refuge for homeless children, and along with a small cash donation to encourage them to take good care. But that was one of the heart-rending moments, the life-changing moments of this whole mission. After they came through registration, they then formed a long line. It starts off, this is the registration building, if you can see my cursor down there at the bottom, and the line works its way up to the optical clinic. And it was here that I met another lost soul. She was standing out in this open space here. This time it was a woman of about 20, well, in her 20s, and she was dressed absolutely filthy rags, just shredded rags and tatters, staring vacantly into the distance, not moving. She couldn't, well, if she did move, it was one leg at a time because she was so stiff. She had full-blown AIDS, and she was just running sores, not a sore spot here or there. The whole length of her arm was just an open sore, both arms. The same with the legs, sores running from her ankles right up to her thighs. We fast-tracked her through to the medical clinic, and sadly, the doctor's prognosis, which was she might have 3 weeks, she might have 3 months. it was again another heartbreak moment. And all we could do was to provide some creams and lotions, clean her, feed her, get her washed and dressed, and give some a fresh change of clothes and some new flip-flop sandals, in the hope that we could make her last few weeks as comfortable as possible. But beyond that, there was nothing else we could really do, unfortunately. So into the optical clinic. On the outside of the clinic, we'd fixed a couple of eye test charts, and we had local volunteers who'd been instructed or trained by the professionals how to conduct the acuity test with alphabet and pictogram charts. And if the patients could read down to a certain point on the chart, then they moved on. And if they didn't pass the basic test, they were referred in to see the optical team. We had one 14-year-old girl, and she started on this chart down here, and you can see her straining to look at it. E, M, E, then she stopped. Can't see any more, she said. Now, the volunteer was somewhat sceptical, but referred her into the opticians. And after a few basic tests, the optician who was examining her picked up a pair of specs on it from his head, said, "Here you are, dear, try these, see if that's any better." "Oh, that's brilliant." And she went straight to the bottom of the chart without missing a beat. Absolutely fantastic. So he looked her straight in the face with a solemn expression. He said, "I'm terribly sorry." He said, "There's nothing I can do for you. That's plain glass in those spectacles." And it turned out she just wanted a pair of spectacles so that she could be one up on her classmates when she got back to school the next day. They were up to every conceivable trick. And it was fun. It cheered up the day sometimes. We had a pair of albino twins, quiet, hiding in the shadows. I think they were about 8 or 9 years old, and literally trying to be invisible. And that was because albinos are seriously at risk in Africa due to their alleged mystical powers. It's not unknown for them to be attacked and to have fingers or toes removed, no anesthetic or whatever. And even entire limbs have been removed in the worst cases out in the wild country, in the belief that these limbs will provide magical powers for the local tribal medicine man. It's a terrible world. And in the real world, of course, albinos do have specific problems. They almost invariably have defective colour vision, and that in turn leads to a constant twitching of the eyes as the brain and the eye muscles try to focus on the image. Now, although everyone on the team, all the professionals knew about albinos, some of them had never had the opportunity to examine albino patients. So this pair of twins got rather special treatment and were examined 3 or 4 times over by different members of the team. And we ensured that they were well cared for, and whatever they needed, we were able to provide for them. All the spectacles were produced overnight. They were prescription spectacles. We didn't have a huge box of recycled reading glasses, and it was a case of try these and see if they help. Every pair of spectacles was produced to prescription. We had 4 basic frames, 2 for the boys, 2 for the girls, and they could choose A or B. That was it. And when they left the clinic, we gave them a sequential index number. And when they came back the following morning to collect their spectacles, they had to produce the number and give the correct name so that they tallied. And we were able to make sure that the right spectacles reached the right patients. Again, corruption and petty thieving is absolutely endemic out there, and we probably weren't 100%, but we felt so that we got most of the way there and generally delivered the right spectacles to the right people. After the opticians, the next stop is the dental clinic, and this is where we made one of the mistakes. We had the dental waiting area immediately outside the clinic, which was the dining room of the women's refuge. And of course, there's quite a few squeaks and squawks coming out of it as children are having teeth extracted or being examined. So at lunchtime that day, we'd found a couple of old footballs and moved the waiting area about 40 yards away and given them some balls to kick about, and that kept them occupied and disinterested, and they distracted them from the squeals and the squawks that came out of the clinic. We had no dental chairs. We couldn't afford to hire them, too heavy to transport, of course, so we just used the dining tables. And at the top end of the table, under the patient's head and shoulders, we stripped a bit of domestic cling film from somebody's kitchen. Well, we bought some big rolls across the top of the table, and as we changed, as one patient jumped down, the next one came up, rip off the cling film and put a fresh layer across. And that was our basic hygiene at the working end of the table. There were 4 dentists, each had his own dental nurse, and each had 2 sets of instruments, one on the go in use, and the other one being sterilised in cold fluids and rinsed before reuse. We had no electricity, no autoclaves, no power tools, so we did no fillings, no orthodontic work. It was extractions only. If it hurts, we'll pull it out. If you don't want it pulling out, that's fine, move on. We did discover that tooth decay is absolutely endemic amongst the children there. It staggered us, the extent of it. And then we learned that the mothers add sugar to almost everything, even to the formula milk, in the belief that adding sugar gives the children more energy. But the first teeth, the milk teeth of the younger children, were always in a very, very sorry state, unfortunately. So the young lass there was quite keen to tap to the dentist. Not everyone was quite so happy. This young fella has just been collected by one of the dental nurses, and he's rather well attached to the flagpole. And as the nurse and the volunteer with the hat beside her, they sort of pulled one leg away from the one arm away from the flagpole. The other arm came round and grabbed it. So they got that one away, and the next one came back, and then both arms were wrapped around the flagpole. And then when they got both arms away, his legs started wrapping around it. I must say, to be honest, I never found out whether he got to see the dentist or not. But again, it was another little incident that cheered up the working day in the heat of Africa. The final port of call for our patients was the medical unit, which was in the dormitory of the Women's Refuge. There were about 6 or 8 beds there, and we hung some curtain wires from the ceiling and looped some loose curtains over them to provide cubicles around each bed. And that created our examination cubicles, as it were. One of the points we made at the very beginning was that we had to treat these patients as we would expect to be treated in our own clinics and with our own doctors. So, for instance, and in particular, we couldn't just wander around snapping photos of patients in clinics unless we asked, because we wouldn't tolerate that. If we were in a consultation with a nurse or a doctor, we wouldn't expect some stranger to walk in with a camera. And I recall when I met this young lad in Dr. Bernard's clinic, I asked permission if I could take the photo, and while that was granted by the translator. And I just commented to the young student who was interpreting for us that she had 2 lovely, beautiful sons, really, and her face just changed and tears appeared. And I asked the interpreter, had I said something wrong, or had he misinterpreted? Oh no, he said, I just translated what you said to her about her sons, and it's probably the first kind word anyone has said to her in a very long time. And I was just staggered. She was such a patient, sort of long suffering. She was such a patient person with the cares of the world on her shoulders, as it were. And for her, for someone to make a casual remark, which obviously struck to her heart, again, another of those moments that was one, we all carried our own moments away. On a different level, we had a young 12-year-old came in, unaccompanied, came into the clinic, and a cherubic round face. And again, all the conversations in Swahili. So it was Dr. Bernard again. He sort of asked him, "What's the trouble, son?" Into Swahili and back again. "Oh, it's my tummy, doctor. It aches." "Oh, yes, and is it bad?" And the young lad groans and rolls his eyes, in Swahili, of course. And the doctor then says, "And when did it start?" And the young lad thinks about it. "Tomorrow." "Pardon? The pain starts tomorrow?" And turned out the young lad just wanted some tablets. Any medication would do, and he could sell them when he got off the site. another of the little shysters who were trying to take advantage of what we were offering. But it was all part of a day's work, and most of these medics had been on this sort of event before, so they'd heard it all before. And those who hadn't were on a pretty quick, steep learning curve as they found out what was what. So we get to the end of the trip through the 3 clinics. In the pharmacy, it was led by Brenda Onguti. That's the young lady in the black sweatshirt in the centre of the picture. She graduated as a pharmacist only 8 weeks earlier, and the Kenyan Ministry of Health insisted that the pharmacy was overseen and everything signed off by a Kenyan registered pharmacist. Fair enough, their rules, we're happy to oblige. And Brenda had a team of 8 or 10 student pharmacists working under her, and every single prescription was dispensed under her signature. She had to give the final check on them. And I don't know how many prescriptions we turned out. We had 11,000 patients, so we reckon there must have been 8,000 prescriptions went out of that pharmacy in the working week. And every prescription had to be explained in detail in Swahili. If it said on the label, take 1 tablet 3 times a day, they had to be warned that taking 3 tablets once a day doesn't work. And the usual sort of warnings for the young women, if they fall pregnant, certain medications had to be discontinued and so on. But everything had to be explained in spoken words rather than written words, because we couldn't be sure of the literacy level of our patients. We had a special It sounds like it's that's right, it was Vinayak. And we also had a special deworming clinic for the large groups of school children. We'd arranged with the schools, and they were bringing them in a class full at a time, 20, 30, 40 students all coming in at once with their class teacher. And the deworming clinic, again, was because of this excessive use of sugar in their diet. And intestinal worms were a constant problem. And after triage by some local health workers who ran the clinic for us, it became the prescription became known as the biblical treatment. Take 2 tablets and run. Every day, by about 40 minutes after the clinics opened, there were the longest lines you've ever seen, people hopping from foot to foot as they waited to get into the toilet block. Surprisingly, one school teacher actually brought his class of 35 to the deworming clinic on 2 successive days. Luckily, one of the health workers spotted it and turned them away the second time. But his plan was simply to get a double dose of everything, and then he would confiscate them and keep them in school for use as and when needed in school. The camp, as I say, wasn't intended to be of any great significance, but it turned out to be the largest medical mission that Rotary has ever run up to 2008, and it attracted national and international attention. The Deputy Minister of Health arrived one day. That's the guy in the blue and white tracksuit just left of centre. He arrived to see it at work. Other official visitors included a representative of President George Bush's Emergency Aid Fund. We had United Nations reps, a party of delegates en route to a public health conference in Mombasa. If I was lucky, I usually got about 5 or 10 minutes warning, because most of the time I was roaming the camp, just making sure that the wheels were turning, and if people needed a break, we had stand-ins to cover their duty as interpreters or nurses or whatever. And in fact, you'll see that's me in the white shirt and the white floppy hat at the left-hand side. That was my uniform for the week, because people wanted me to be easily recognisable. So where's Peter? Oh, he's the tall guy over there with a white hat. And I'd barely got 2 minutes to myself. It's great fun. Anyway, I usually got about 5 minutes warning of the visiting parties, just time to run around the camp and warn the clinic leaders to expect visitors. And it was interesting, and it had 1 or 2 interesting knock-on effects. There was one day I saw an adult with a couple of children who were standing watching me quite closely. And earlier in the week, It turned out he'd brought a class of children to the clinics, and after a while on this particular morning, he caught me with in between doing things and buttonholed me. And the teacher introduced the two pupils, a boy and a girl, about 12 or 13 years old, and they were the chair and the secretary of the school's student council. So even though their school is a tin shack out of scrap timber and scrap metal, and the benches are just old packing cases, and the desks are planks nailed on bits of wood, they actually ran a school council to give them some proper structure to their early years. And together, these two, the young boy and the young girl, gave a very polite and very formal speech of thanks to me on behalf of the Rotary team. And they presented a bundle of 30 or 40 letters from their classmates. And they may be a bit small on your screen, so I'll read them out. If you look at the pink one on the left-hand side, that says, "Thank you so much. Come again soon. All my sour teeth are gone." One way of describing toothache, I suppose. Bon voyage. And the larger one, again, I'll read out, that's this over here. "My dear friends, thank you very much for help you gave me. I was having tooth problem, and when it was pulled out today, I feel okay." And he goes on to say in the bottom paragraph, "I'm a boy 10 years old. My father died in 2002. That was 6 years before we got there. And my mother died in 2004. I'm living with my older sister, who is 16, and she looks after me and our two small sisters. And sadly, that's quite a common scenario. Father has gone, mother has gone or died, and there's a teenager as the head of the household doing the best they can to look after the family. Grandparents have long gone, or perhaps grandparents still live out in the bush somewhere and haven't come into the city. But this was, again, not an uncommon scenario. And it made us stop and consider just how lucky we as Rotarians are in the lives we lead and the homes we live in. It was 10 active days. We were there for 2 weeks. We had a couple of days at the beginning to set up, a couple of days to strike and clear up at the end of the week, and 10 working days in the middle. And it was 10 days of huge highs, one being invited to a garden party at the residence of the ambassador for us. There were tragic lows. There was the young 27-year-old male brought to us. He had multiple stab wounds in his neck and chest, having suffered summary justice for stealing a mobile phone in the slums. His wounds were way beyond anything we could handle, and ambulances wouldn't come into the slums. So we stabilised his wounds and then had him medevaced in the car of one of the local Rotarians. We heard that sadly he died before the week was out, which was unfortunate, but it was beyond our capabilities. We had 2 young girls, aged 4 and 9, brought to us having been raped, in the strange belief that having sex with an underage child will cure you or prevent you from catching AIDS. I mean, totally shocking. I mean, you just can't comprehend how anyone can put that forward as a theory, or how anyone can be daft enough to believe that it could be true. And it happens again and again. The nurses treated their wounds and they were taken to a children's refuge run by a charity that was known and trusted by the local Rotary clubs we were working for. Luckily, the 4-year-old was too young to know what the attack was all about, but the older girl was really quite traumatized, and it would take her a long time to recover. And we were told that later an uncle in the family had been arrested. Again, that's quite common. It's a member of the extended family who was able to get close to the children to inflict the harm upon them. So as I've said several times, for many of us, it truly was a life-changing experience. Seeing the squalid living conditions, the mud floors, the tin shacks, the water from a standpipe, it was difficult to comprehend how they always walked tall and carried themselves with pride. How their clothes, they might be threadbare, but they were clean, they were colourful. We saw women in 2-piece suits and battered boots crossing the slums in the morning and carrying their smart shoes in carrier bags to keep them clean, on their way to work at local banks. Now, one of them looked like she was in uniform for Barclays Bank. There were guys in snow white shirts, knife edge creases down their slacks. They were going to work in the shopping malls. So they all had a place to go. They weren't sort of unemployed or unemployable. And they all took this terrific pride in their appearance. And without exception, they showed gratitude for the smallest things we were able to do. Typical example, when we travelled out, everyone was asked to fill the spare corners of their suitcases with anything that children could use in school. Pencils, rubbers, pencil sharpeners, drawing instruments, crayons, chalk, anything. And every one of us carried a pocket full of these around. And if a child was particularly brave in the dentist clinic, or someone had been kept waiting a bit longer than normal to be seen to, we would just dip in our pocket and pull out a fistful of bits and pieces for them. And again, it was genuine gratitude that they showed us for all these things. So we got to the end of our week, and the motto, the Rotary motto that particular year was "Make Dreams Real." And in conclusion, perhaps we can only hope that for the 11,000 people we treated, perhaps we did make some dreams come real. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Who's got the unmute buttons? Patrick got it.
Peter, as a governor who served during 2008-9, thank you for helping to make the dreams real. That some people know that theme resonated with me and with our member of our family's health that particular year, that had more meaning than I could ever imagine. So for you to go and do this, I personally appreciate what you did.
Well, thank you very much indeed, David. One of the key points of it was actually being there at the coalface. We knew how much it had cost. We have all been involved in fundraising for all sorts of things in the world of Rotary, but to be there at the coalface and see how the money was actually spent and accounted for me, that really was quite an eye-opener, and really encouraged me to put more effort into fundraising for international projects.
Oh, thank you very, very much, Peter. A very brave situation. Any questions for Peter?
Yeah, Roberto. Yep. You need to turn your microphone on, Roberto.
First, hi to everyone. Thanks, Peter, for your speech. Very interesting. Congratulations for that. I'm immediate past district governor for District 4340. And before asking you a question, I want to say hi to Doug Vincent. Many years I haven't seen you since I was a GSC team leader to District 7080. Hi, Doug. Peter, it's amazing what Rotary can do in working around the world. And more than a question, it's just a reflection about the impact of what you did or what that team did in Africa. And thanks for that. It's very, very inspiring.
There were two unexpected results as well. Across that slum, there are all sorts of 2-cent charities running, providing medical aid of one sort or another. Perhaps they're providing women's clinics or child's clinics or whatever, and they live on a shoestring. And I was worried that perhaps they might feel a bit aggrieved that we were, shall we say, taking their patients away from them. But the message we got back was that they were absolutely delighted because we gave them breathing space, and they could just sit back and collect their resources, and all the material we had left at the end of the camp, that was distributed amongst these clinics anyway. But the other thing which came out of the blue, there was a wonderful pharmacist, a member of the pharmacy team, Christine Sangita, and she was a senior final year med student, and she said, "What are you going to do with all these registration forms when you're finished?" I said, "I don't know, they end up in the pharmacy, that's at the end of the trail." So she said, "I'll bring 5 students in tomorrow and we'll analyze them." And at the end of the mission, we were able to, she prepared it and submitted a report on the state of health of the 11,000 patients in those slums in Mukuru, Nairobi. The ministry had no idea. They didn't know what the state of health was, what the common ailments were. It was an unforeseen, unexpected bonus.
Thank you.
Hello, Peter.
Any other
Hello.
questions?
Yeah, right here. Tom.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi. I live in Zambia. So what you saw for the week and a half that you were there, I see all the time. And so you answered my question when I was going to ask you, what did you do with the equipment when you were done and you left it behind? Thank you for that, because what we find in my part of Africa, in Zambia, we have very highly skilled doctors and nurses and technicians, but no equipment. So leaving it behind, Peter, was probably one of the strongest things you could have done for the medical professionals there, because that gave them the tools to be able to do what they know how to do. But simple little things like forceps or little things, even tongue depressors. I've seen them boil tongue depressors and use them again because they don't have any.
Yeah, well,
So thank you for leaving this stuff behind.
So as not to mislead anyone, the dental and most of the equipment actually went home, but what we left were the unused supplies, the boxes of medication and dressings and the basic equipment, the sterilizing fluids, the antiseptics, the antibiotics, all the things which you would expect to find in a clinic, but which these people just didn't have access to because of lack of funding, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Steve Sokol, nice to see you. Steve and I go back a long time through ROTI and through ICUFR.
Each year we have a theme in Rotary, and I was remembering before the internet, the district governors would meet in California, and the incoming president would announce the new theme. Then the district governors would go back home and call a district conference and officially announce the new theme. And now today, when it's announced, we know about it within 2 or 3 seconds.
So I have a story to tell, tacked on to what you said, but relating with Peter with the Make Dreams Real. We were using, at the time with our district, we were using Constant Contact to get a hold of everybody. So that night when we got done, after it was Monday night, which happened to have been our 25th wedding anniversary, I spent in San Diego with my wife being trained. We're up in the room and I'm sending an email out. Thank God, literally, I asked her to proofread my email that was going out to all the club presidents in our district, all the secretaries elect, all of the treasurers elect, et cetera, all of my officers. The theme was Make Dreams Real. What I had typed was Keep Dreams Real. And I'm ready to hit send and put that out. And she looked at me, picked up the attaché that we had gotten that had the theme emblazoned on it, literally hit me upside the head with it and said, "It is Make Dreams Real." I fixed it and then sent it out. Proofreading is good, and if somebody else proofreads it, it's even better. But the theme, I mean, every theme is special in one way, shape, or form to whether you're the current governor or you're a past governor, whatever it might be. Each theme you can use to in my opinion, you can use it to get people enthused, to do something different than you might not have done otherwise. It really does make a difference.
We could have left it without the correction, and then people would certainly remember your name after the year.
True. Now, I don't know what this said for our governor class. We are to the best of my knowledge, we are the only governor class that has a theme sewn to the inside of the jacket. You know where the jacket pocket is?
Yeah.
The theme is also on the inside of the jacket. So in case you forgot, you go to your pen, oh, that's what it is. And you could then say the theme again. I don't know if DK Lee thought he had a rather an educated group of governors. I'm not sure what the reason was, but it did come in handy over so often. 3 simple words, but you mess them up, you've blown everything out of the water. So yes, I don't want my name to be remembered that way. That's not, that infamous is one thing. Famous is something a little different. I don't like infamous.
Yeah. A couple of other little bonuses we had just come to mind as we're talking. The firm, there was a safari company which runs out on safari, and they provided the transfers from Nairobi Airport to our hotel. And they were so impressed by what we achieved, they offered to go matched funding 50-50 with any organisation that would that wanted to or was willing to build a permanent clinic on the site of the church that we've been using. And last I heard, it was actually under construction, and they were resourcing the funds to provide the ongoing maintenance to sustain it as a viable clinic. So that was another little bonus that we hadn't expected that came out of the blue.
Peter, it's Richard. Could I ask a question? Do you have any intent of returning and doing a repeat visit?
Well, as soon as it was over, everybody said, yeah, we must do this again. But it took me from February to September, so it took me 6 or 7 months to do all the preparatory work and to get everything in place. And as you know, I'm not sure if things have changed in recent years, but at the time, you had to get your grant applications in during the summer vacation, pretty well at the beginning of the Rotary year. They were considered, you got a decision in January to run the event the following September. So it takes about a year to go through the Rotary process to get all your thousands of dollars all stacked up in a line. And then it took us another 3 months to wind it all down, write the reports, balance the books. So you're looking at about a year and a half, 2 years work. So sadly, it wasn't really practical to run another one straight off, but it'd be good fun.
Richard Clark, could you tell us about your club?
Oh, well, okay, sure, Tom. So I moved from Toronto out to the west coast of Canada. I live on a small island of the Pacific called Vancouver Island, not to be confused with the city. So I'm a member of the Strathcona Sunrise Club, which has been around for, I think, 33 years. We're a breakfast club. We met this morning on Zoom. I've been acting as the tech guy orchestrating the Zoom meetings. And of course, with COVID, we're kind of got the challenge that everybody else has. So we've had to cancel our largest fundraiser, which is a Rib Fest, which is one of the things many Canadian clubs do. And our piggy bank is getting pretty empty. So we're down to having to put the call out to members who want to support a particular project or whatever. And we've got projects that we've been pursuing for the long term. One in Kenya, one in Mexico, one in Lithuania, one in the Chennai region of India. So we've developed some long-term partnerships. We're down to 49 members. COVID has caused some members to decide it was time to leave Rotary, unfortunately. But we'll keep working away at it. So that's my club.
Just a few months before I went out on this mission, I actually had my first cardiac treatment. And word of this, one or two of the Rotarians knew that I might have to take a rest occasionally. And word of this reached a couple of the med students, and a very personable young African lady, I think in her early 20s, a med student, she assigned herself as my personal shadow. So if she thought I was about to fall over, she would be there with a bottle of still water to keep me hydrated and so on. It was rather nice to have one's own personal medical assistant tailing around behind me.
Roberto Silva, tell us about your club.
Okay, I'm from District 4340. That's the central part of Chile. We have 3 districts. My district is probably the widest district in the world. It goes more than 5,000 kilometers, all the way from the Andes to Easter Island. So it's sort of tricky, okay? And as governor, you have the tough job to visit Easter Island. So we usually travel there for a week and do some projects in the island. And I'm a member of Rotary Club Huelén, a small club in the central part of Santiago. And what else? A district, we are 1,100 Rotarians and very active with a lot of projects in mind for this year. That's it.
Can I just say hello and welcome to Ndudi, who's just joined us. I'm afraid you've probably got the time shift wrong. We've just come to the end of our hour, but you missed all the good bits.
I am recording this. I am recording this. I will upload it to probably my club's YouTube channel, and then I'll send out a link for it. I'll do a post or an email or something. I'll figure out how to do that. But Peter, I didn't ask you. I'm assuming it's okay that I recorded it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you can see it recording on the top. So, I mean, at least I can't surreptitiously do it. But anybody that missed it can go back and review them.
Cheryl, tell us about your club.
And this is going to be quick because I'm getting ready to go into my 3rd one of these things that I wrote today. I got 4 of them tomorrow. Well, my club is in the central part of Massachusetts. We've dwindled down a little over the last few years. We've had a lot of either senior members who've passed on or had younger members who've moved away. But fortunately, we do have a lot of members who are in their 30s and 40s, which is nice. This COVID's been really tough for us, having to cancel all these great things that we do. One of our biggest projects during the year is a food and brew fest. That this was supposed to be our 8th year doing it. We get about 2,500 people that attend, and we get the local restaurants and breweries together, and we get people from all over the state. In fact, we get people from Connecticut and New Hampshire that come down to this thing every year, and it's a great thing. And we do it with another Rotary Club, and we raise so much money that we're able to send one of our members, I think it was Guatemala. We sent him, our district does a project and requests someone from each of the clubs to go on a project. And so one of our members was able to go to Guatemala. We sent him in on that. We do a lot of things for just basically in the community itself. We've been doing Zoom meetings right at the moment. Not a lot of people are doing them, but we're still trying to do as many things locally as we can. And so that's pretty much what our club is, but we're a few years shy of 100 years old. So we're trying to hang on as much as we can, and we'll make it through all of this. But this was a great presentation, Peter. Thank you for putting it on. I love hearing about every little thing that other clubs and stuff are doing. And I got to run, and we'll see you guys next month. So take care and bye.
Great to see you, Cheryl.
Yep.
David in Liberia, could you tell us about your club? David, go ahead.
He's lost his video feed.
Yeah. Well, Doug Vincent, your club is helping with the disaster in Beirut. Maybe you could tell us about the details.
Okay, well, that's one reason I was late getting on, because I've been working on that project. So a local hospital nearby, McMaster University Hospital in Hamilton, Ontario, reached out to us because they had colleagues at a hospital in Beirut who was really scrambling, urgently needing some medical supplies. So they reached out to me for assistance. So my Rotary Club has partnered with them. You can follow us on Facebook page, Friends Helping Lebanon. And as some of you may know, others may not, we have in the nearby city of Stratford, a Rotarian who coordinates a medical recycling depot. And it's very similar to the one our friends in Vancouver have, where they ship medical equipment. The one in Vancouver is kind of like everything the size of a wheelchair and bigger. The one in Stratford is everything the size of a wheelchair and smaller, including many medications. So some of our Rotary doctors and pharmacists and some registered nurses work there to sort through the medications and the supplies. So last Saturday, I arranged for one of the doctors who's organizing it from the medical side. I'm coordinating it from our club. We went to the depot in Stratford, and he was able to identify the most urgently needed medications and surgical items. And so we started packing on Sunday. They just informed me today that there's 2 skids packed, and there's a third and a fourth one being worked on. And so I got a kind of an interesting story, actually. So my club is obviously doing a fundraiser to raise money to pay for the shipping. And our plan is to ship the urgent needs by air freight, hopefully by the weekend. And then we'll try and load a container to ship a container in the next week or two. And we've reached out to the Vancouver Rotarians to maybe ship a medical container from their warehouse. But the power of the internet is just crazy. Like on Sunday, I put this Facebook page up called Friends Rotary Helping Lebanon. And within hours, I had some Rotarians coming on. Other Rotarians were linking me to Lebanese people who are in Rotary. A Lebanese friend in London connected to a friend in Oakville. The friend in Oakville connected us to a friend who runs a shipping logistics company in Toronto. We got a hold of them. They're owned by Lebanese people. They already have 1 container shipped, and they're going to ship our skids air freight, and they're going to take care of shipping our container. And the cost is like cheap. So just through the connections of Rotary and the internet, it's amazing the speed and the momentum we've already got. The Rotarians in Brampton, which is in our district, a lot of Lebanese community there. They're already in fundraising mode to raise money with their Lebanese community. So that's really keeping us busy to send medical supplies and medications to them. There's been 3 hospitals demolished because of the explosion. So the remaining hospitals and clinics are just overwhelmed. Horrific stories that we hear from the doctors there. People are walking into the emergency room carrying their fingers or their limbs, hoping the doctors can sew them back together. One lady walked in with her abdomen blown open. She was holding her intestines in her arms. It just awful, awful stories you're hearing that these doctors are having to deal with. with very, very limited resources. So that's the motivating factor to be helping those people. On a positive note, I'm also working on a $124,000 global grant project to help rehabilitate from the Australian bushfires. And I just got an email less than an hour ago that our grant's been approved for Australia. So we got lots on the go from my chair.
Well, thank you very much, Doug. It's certainly a needy project.
I should just add, if any clubs want to join us, you're more than welcome to join in on the Lebanese project. For the Canadian clubs, well, for anybody who wants to donate, we've got online donation processing with CRA tax receipts being issued. Those, unfortunately, aren't much good to our U.S. friends, but for any Canadian clubs, pass the word along if you want to join in. We welcome any club anywhere to join us on this venture. Thank you.
Tris, a big change for you. You finished your year as district governor, and what's it like now?
Quite busy. Last night I went and signed off the forms to merge my club with another club, because my club had lost a lot of members and we decided to merge the two clubs. So we had a little tiny meeting which was socially distanced because we're still on the lockdown sort of thing. Not quite, but close to it. And so I'm be changing my club's name in all my signatures pretty soon. And I actually just noticed Richard there, or I saw him a while back, because I think Richard and I met at the Glasgow Convention.
I think that's right.
We went into Glasgow. I can remember we went in for a meal at a pizza parlor in the centre of Glasgow.
That I don't remember, but
yeah, we had a couple of Canadians and a couple of Americans and a Swedish chap and a bunch of Brazilians all round this one table, because the Vancouver Club, and then we went to a dinner. So, oh, we're going out to the Ubiquitous Chip.
yes.
The Vancouver clubs were going to the Ubiquitous Chip. So I turned up there, and Razor, those of you that have been in ROTI for a while will remember Razor. And I was actually unemployed at the time. And when the bill came out, somebody who was an accountant on the table had worked it out that it was 35 quid a head. And I said, well, I'm going to have to pay by cheque because I haven't got £35 in my pocket. And Razor just said, I'll do it. I just rolled off a stream of notes and paid for it. And then when I went back to my mother's cousin where I was staying, and they said, where did you go? I said, we went to some place called the Ubiquitous Chip. And she said, my God, that's one of the top 10 restaurants in the whole of Glasgow. You don't just pop along to the Ubiquitous Chip. But yeah, that was my first exposure to real international Rotary.
Yeah.
And then the next one came when the convention came to Birmingham, and I've only missed one since Birmingham. I missed Bangkok, but I've been everywhere else, and except of course for the virtual one. I'm counting that as I went. You know, I did go to some of the plenary sessions and the breakouts. But yeah, things are different, and I've just been asked, I was nudged in the direction of possibly becoming an assistant regional Rotary Foundation coordinator.
Go for it.
So that's going to be fun, but that doesn't start until July next year, thank goodness, because it's an RI appointment. So I can see my name is being snuck up. Eh? Yeah, well, I said yes, I'll do it, but it's got to go up through the ranks to the current RRFC, and then he'll put the names forward if he's happy with me to RI. So it'll give me something to do. you know, you get this. I don't know whether Roberto found this, because we have a district council which meets around about the end of June, beginning of July. And I kicked off the district council. It was 3 days before the end of my year. I kicked it off with a farewell roundup of our year, where our motto from being, oh, Rotary connects the world, actually became a way of life for us all, because we really did start connecting the world, rather than it just being a phrase that sometimes they are. And I kicked it off, and then I handed it on to my successor, and he ran the rest of the meeting, and it was on Zoom. And when it shut down, I just sat there and thought, I've got nothing to do. My diary had gone from multiple meetings every day to one meeting on Zoom a week for the whole of July. And I felt quite empty. You know, you sit back there and you think, I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to do anything. Any problems that come up are his, which is in a way nice, but in a way you feel, I don't know whether Roberto, you found this, you feel a little bit empty. Those first few days, you feel just that little bit empty. You haven't got anything lined up. I now have, because my current DG has just dropped me in on it. We have in RIBI, we have district standing orders, which is the way we will operate the district under the rules of RI and RIBI. And our district standing orders are a bit of a mess, and we are rewriting them. Unfortunately, I'm not a lawyer, so it will be rewritten the way a sensible person would write it. But that got dropped onto me on Monday night. He said, oh, well, I want a working party on this, and Tris, will you chair it? And you think, yeah, okay. Because it's going to be fun. It's really looking at how the district operates, and he wants to actually change the way we do. He's trying to make the district, he's changing the district executive team. He's changed that completely, but the team he's putting on, he's calling it the district support team. And he wants to make them more accessible and more willing to go out and talk to the clubs, so the clubs realize that the district team are actually worthwhile having. And I think for a number of years, and I don't know whether you've met this, Peter, in RIBI circles, sometimes the district team is seen as those people up there who are going to tell us what to do, rather than those people who can help us to do something.
Yeah. We had that in our district.
That's the way.
It was very, in our case, it was Newcastle. The core of our district, all the active officers, district officers, were up in Newcastle, which was actually in the top corner of the district. You know, it wasn't centrally located, and it was the same gang, as it were, who rotated the jobs, and it was too settled in their ways. It wasn't good for Rotary. It wasn't good for them.
No, we were very similar. Of course, I live on 4 miles inside one side of the district, but I've got district team members from all over the place. So I would have an hour and a half drive to get to a district team meeting, because some have got an hour and a half from the other side to come in. But again, it's all the same old faces. You look at them and you look at the list, and half the people on district I can remember from 5-6 years ago. Yeah. And we're trying to, we've got a new man in who is very much into social enterprises, doing things differently.
I think one of the key
managed to get through his first month.
One of the key differences, Trish, is the enthusiasm for taking office. Now, I understand that. My impression is, especially in the States, people want to be president. There's the prestige, the kudos of being a club president. Sometimes here in the UK, you have to break a few arms to get people to volunteer, don't you? And I did 2 successive years once when there wasn't a president-elect to follow me on. And there was another year when we had 4 past presidents rotated between themselves to fill the vacancy.
I've had a club with 4 presidents in 1 year.
No.
Carved it up, they did 3 months each. They came in, did 3 months, and then changed to the next chap. One club had 2 concurrent presidents. So they split the president's role between 2 people, which I found was staggering, because if you've got a good secretary, the president does what he's told. And he sets the tone, he gets on with it, and then he does what he's got to do, and the team in the club sort it out. But one club with 2 presidents at the same time, that's quite unusual. And sorry?
On a slightly more cheerful note, you mentioned the fun side of Rotary, and a lot of years ago, I was at an early conference of the ICUFR, the Computer Users Fellowship. We met in Chicago, and the hotel we were staying at had a happy hour from 6 till 7 in the bar, and it was free drinks. And one of the local Rotarians, who was, shall we say, 1 step ahead of us, he stationed himself at the door and acted as an unofficial drinker and offered everyone a drink. And they were all thinking, he's a grand chap. I've only just met him and he's buying me free drinks, knowing that it was the happy hour and he wasn't going to have to pay for it. So one of our other members went behind the bar and got hold of the bar staff and said, look, when this hour's over, just write him a chit and give him a bill for all the drinking he's handed out. Which she did with great solemnity, and it scared the living daylights out of the poor guy. Tom and David, I'm going to have to leave you, I'm afraid. It's our evening meal time coming up here. So can I just say thanks ever so much for the invitation to Tom and to David for pulling all the strings and pushing the buttons in the background. It's been great to be with you. Nice to see Tris and Steve and so many old friends again.
Yeah, I mean, we've corresponded a few times, Peter and I, over things.
Yeah. So I look forward to
good to see you then, Peter.
Online or in a Zoom somewhere.
Yep. You all take care. Take care, Peter.
Take care, Peter. Take care. Bye.
David in Liberia, you tell us about your club?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, fine. Yes, I'm in Monrovia, Liberia in West Africa, and our club is about 40 people. We're just over 50 years old. We're in a district that has 10 countries, 3 different languages. So the district itself is a little bit fragmented. It starts in Cote d'Ivoire and goes all the way up to Cape Verde and some countries between. So we have Portuguese, French, and English. We're very happy that a couple of years back, we put in an oxygen plant in a global grant for approximately $200,000 that has been essential for the youth against the virus that's with us now. So we are now, again, hanging our hats because we are the host partner for a global grant that is just over $1 million. That is a unique grant. It involves Mercy ships. I don't know if everyone's heard of it, but Mercy Ships operates a hospital vessel that has primarily gone into South Africa and West Africa. It's been around for a long time, and they are undertaking a new vessel that will be called Global Mercy. And this grant that was started by a past president of RIBI, Debbie Hodge, will provide equipment on board the vessel. This equipment involves mainly surgical equipment, which again can be sterilized and used again. It's mobile because it's on a vessel. The vessel itself is expected here in Liberia as its first call. Of course, the COVID-19 has changed the schedule, so we're not quite sure yet. And it's still being built. I think it's being outfitted now in the Philippines. So we're really proud to do this. I think I heard from Rotary International that it is the largest grant since 2013-14. So we've worked closely with the international partner in the UK, and we're happy to see this go forward. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. I see we're past the hour now.
I was just going to say to David that I can remember the first Mercy ship when that came out several years ago. And again, my district made a big contribution to this grant. My immediate predecessor was very, very strong on the Mercy ship grant application because, of course, Debbie was the she was the president of RIBI before my year. So yeah, I know of Mercy ships, and I know of the first one because the first one I think we contributed an eye theatre or an ophthalmic theatre in the first ship, and we've got another. I think we're doing fitting out another theatre in this one. I think.
Yeah, it's a number of items, and as I said, the total is just over $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I
think the publicity actually is going to come out in the beginning of September.
Oh, right.
It's actually the new building is not public as yet.
No.
Yes, so I did a Polio Plus trip to Benin, and during our stay we visited a Mercy ship, and that was an unforgettable experience to go on board and meet all the volunteers. Just an amazing story.
Yeah, they not have the volunteers on the ship, but they also operate let's say a screening triage area. They have facilities for taking care of families. They operate, the plan was to operate a school here as well. And you have the African Mercy is the one you were on, and now the new one is called the Global Mercy. Yeah.
Okay, I see we're past the hour now, and we want to thank everyone for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on September the 12th, our next Zoom. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Well, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, Doug.
Bye-bye.